Welcome back, friends, to our spring session, week 1, Wood Element 101. We're here at part 4, and we're going to dig into some of the metaphysics and abstract alchemical ideas about how the wood element is manifested in physical form. We're going to go on a little journey here that looks at the origin of wood from a Taoist, classical Chinese medicine perspective. The concept is going to take us down a bit of a rabbit hole, exploring how the philosophy that we are manifested from the stars and live within this universal framework, positioning ourselves in orientation to the heavens above us, has an impact on the energetics of the wood element. We're going to look at this in a deeper dive connection into what the Taoists call the green galaxy. We'll look at the planetary influences of Jupiter on the wood element, as well as the direction of east and the trigrams and branches according to the I Ching. So just to give a little context for our talk today, there is an idea that has been postulated and reiterated all over the world by Dr. Amit Goswami. Dr. Amit Goswami is a theoretical physicist that has developed the concept of downward causation. His concept looks at the idea that we physically manifest only in relationship to all of these other energetic constructs, universal, mental, vital levels of function that then give rise to our physical sense of who we are in the tangible. So his idea is that we come from this place of bliss, which would maybe be akin to the Taoist concept of arriving from the stars. And from there, we exist in a supramental or conscious vibrational state that then translates into mental attitude, ego, beliefs, thoughts that then inform the way that our vital energies, our nervous system, our chi flow, our chakras, our energetic systems start to inform the development of physical, tangible tissues of the body. So this concept, there's a adjunct learning, if you guys are interested in, called the, he wrote a book, Dr. Goswami, called The Quantum Activist and the Quantum Doctor. So The Quantum Activist is actually a movie that you could watch. It used to be on Netflix. I'm not sure where it is now, but it goes deep into this conversation, which gives you a little bit of the philosophical idea of what we're talking about. But just for the terms of our conversation today, we want to think about how the impact of these vital, big picture, universal energies might be influencing our energy flow as well as our physical bodies. So this is a really interesting image here that is taken from a book by Manthag Chia, and it looks at how the Taoists have a philosophical idea or understanding that there is a galaxy that manifests the vibrational qualities of the color green that then give rise to the planetary energy of Jupiter and modulate a connection of how that planetary frequency aligns to connect to our right parietal lobe and then essentially bleeds into our auric levels and gives rise to the liver and gallbladder tendons and ligaments. So going back to Dr. Goswami's theory, it's this idea that this universal energy gives rise to this conscious awareness in the aura, which then gives rise to these vital energies building and growing our body systems and cells, and then turns into the physical manifestation of liver, gallbladder, tendons, and ligaments. So each of the elements is related to each one of our cranial bones, and there's said to be an access point of our nervous system to this green galaxy and these manifesting qualities of the wood element energy through the right parietal lobe of the brain. So you can kind of see here in this image, this frequency energy coming down, translating into the form through this right parietal lobe and creating this space of manifesting and organizing the actual function and intelligence of the wood element. When we connect to planetary influences from the Taoist perspective, it helps us to connect with universal energy. It also gives us insight to karmic influences and patterns, energetics that have, essentially been existing before us for centuries and centuries. And it also allows us to master our present mental, physical, and emotional lives and integrate into source energies. So for centuries and since antiquity, many cultures have been looking at the connection to the stars and the planets and the moons and our vital body having a direct orientation to these energies that are just so much bigger than us that we nestle into within our physical form. The wood element is said to also manifest from the directional quadrant of the east. So this is many different traditional indigenous cultures look at the directions of the northeast, southwest, and even in classical Chinese medicine, we're looking at the 8 directions that have the quarter directions like northeast, northwest, etc. And each of these energies of the directions are said to, on our planetary sphere, govern different elements of our physicality and our consciousness and our behaviors and patterns. So as it relates to classical Chinese medicine, the East is said to give rise to the wood, or it is the direction of the wood element. In feng shui, it works to govern family and health. And it is connected to the energetics of renewal, as we see every morning the rising sun giving us a new opportunity for idealism, spontaneity, curiosity, and the capacity to dream into a new beginning. The East is also known as an opportunity for change. So just like we talked about the change of the spring winds, the idea of the decision-making and direction of taking initiative of our purpose and plans in life, creating these opportunities for change at that east direction is a powerful connection to the wood element. So morning ritual, morning practices, engaging in a connection to the rising sun and facing the east direction will help instill these values of idealism, spontaneity, and curiosity. So we'll also look at another alchemical manifestation or manifesting factor of the wood element. So the I Ching is an ancient book that has been used throughout history for many, many different purposes and reasons. And from my perspective, I have found a fascinating understanding of how this book looks at pattern language, which when we look at seasonal rhythms, manifestations of matter and material, and kind of go down the wormholes of looking at the potentials of where we come from in existence, the language of mathematics and patterns is really powerful. And the I Ching really illustrates a beautiful poetic of how all the manifesting forces of the world work together and translate and rhythmically transfer into and change into each other. So this book is a book of symbols representing manifestations of change and includes 64 hexagrams that also show a beautiful parallel to the flower of life and the patterns of interrelationship and interdependency. So these branches and stems and patterns give rise to the different elements and the different expressions of the elements. So we're going to look at the 2 yin and yang elements of wood and their relationship to the I Ching. So this one here is the Chen. This is hexagram 51 in the I Ching. And so when you look at these lines to the right, you have the yin lines as well as the yang lines. So the yin lines are the broken lines that you see at the top here. And then you also have the yang lines here. And so this one is a mimic. You know, these are two of the same, this one and this one repeats itself. And this one is known as Chen, the arousing shock or thunder. It relates to this energy of catalyst or yang wood. So this is meaning something is happening and something has to change. So I'm going to read to you a little bit about how this yang wood energy relates to thunder. And what's really exciting too is as we return to spring and we get a little deeper into spring, the spring rains and the spring thunderstorms come as well. So there's this beautiful poetic that kind of unfolds when we start to look at some of these patterns. So this arousing shock and thunder, I'm reading here from my copy of the I Ching to you, represents the eldest son who seizes rule with energy and power. A yang line develops below two yin line and presses up forcefully. So here's the yang line, and here's the two yin lines, and here's the space to press up forcefully. Remember, we talked about how wood energy is the upward direction of yang forceful action. This movement is so violent that it arouses terror. It is symbolized by thunder, which bursts forth from the energy, and its shock causes fear and trembling. However, it's important to know that when man has learned within his heart what fear and trembling mean, that he is safeguarded against any terror produced by outside influences. So this talks a lot about knowing who you are, knowing that you have your core. Remember, we talked about the character of the wood element having that central access of that tree trunk that is stable and doesn't get bothered by the energy around it, but it expands outward. So this is very much like that. When we know our trembling and fear that is outside of us, we are able to safeguard against that by not getting pushed off our course. Let the thunder roll and spread terror 100 miles around. He remains so composed and reverent in spirit that the sacrificial rite is not interrupted. So it's like nothing can push you off your course. Once you know who you are, you can take action, or action can be taken around you, and it won't deviate you or push you off of your course, and you stay safe. So that's the yang trigram. So we'll look also here at the yin wood trigram. This is the hexagram 57. And it is known as sun or gentle penetrating wind. So this is the more yin, planning, organizing, this idea that with gradual, consistent relationship to the purpose and the core, we can keep moving forward and keep renewing our faith. So this one is known as the eldest daughter and symbolizes wind or wood. It has for its attributes gentleness, which nonetheless penetrates like the wind or like the growing wood with its roots. The dark principle, so that yin energy, in itself is rigid and immovable. It is dissolved by penetrating light principle, to which it subordinates itself in gentleness. So let's explore that passage. The dark principle in itself, rigid and immovable. So that is the core energy, foundational connection to the truth that is self-aware and connected to purpose. It is dissolved and penetrated by the light principle to which it subordinates itself in gentleness. So when we talk about that, that's how we are looking at how awakening that core principle to actualize into the desire of the light of the heart. So we have the truth and the core stability within us, and it becomes subordinate to how the light wants us to direct and grow towards fruition. In nature, it is the wind that disperses the gathered clouds, leaving the sky clear and serene. In human life, it is penetrating clarity of judgment that thwarts all dark, hidden motives. In the life of community, it is the powerful influence of a great personality that uncovers and breaks up those intrigues which shun the light of the day. So this is where we're looking at staying on the course, not getting caught off, and not getting clouded by the judgment or the control that takes us away from our light. So all of this said is a pretty abstract kind of wild look into the wood element, and I hope you guys can gain some insight or some awareness. I know some of these concepts might seem a little bit unfamiliar, but just kind of glossing over the surface to spark a little interest into this idea that the wood is a manifestation of these patterns of universal and natural potential for change and development that have existed since antiquity and are also part of who we are. Looking at these themes and exploring their relationship to our own consciousness and wood energies will help bolster our understanding as well as awaken a little bit of awareness and potential to think outside of the box and start organizing and dynamically connecting us to our own inner wood energies. Please feel free to share any comments, questions, ideas, inspirations that you gain from this talk in the comments area, and start a dialogue as we connect to manifesting and mastering our wood energies together. Stay tuned for our last Wood 101 presentation, Wood 101 Part 5.